Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another video, another video. Now today I am doing a ramble video. I haven't done one of these for a while, I don't think. In fact, let me go and check the last time I did a ramble video of any sorts. 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. Jeez Louise, here we go, 9 months ago when I came back from Spain. Crazy. Well, sorry about that, sorry about that if you like the rambles. If you don't like the rambles, then fair enough. We're back. I'm back with a ramble video. I'm very excited, apprehensive, and slightly nervous to do this video because today I'm going to be getting slightly political, slightly controversial perhaps in some of the things that I say. So if you're not a fan of that, then please click off now. You have been warned. Yeah, I'm going to get political today. I'm going to talk about religion today. I'm going to be talking about the state of the world today, on the day that hopefully by the time this comes out, humans have gone further away from Earth than ever before. What should be a monumentous day, yet the world is still imbued with so much hatred, pain, suffering, and war. So I just want to have a little bit of a ramble. So I brought up a beer, a Corona, just to sip on throughout this video because this could be a long one. But before I get into the politics, before I get into the religion, before I get into the potentially controversial stuff, let me talk a little bit about what I've been up to, my future plans, and how you guys are doing. Let me know in the comments. I'm interested. I love reading the comments, especially on Ramble videos. So what have I been up to? Why? Where have I been? So happy Easter to anyone that celebrates. I have just spent the last week in Italy with my family, which has been great. It's been great fun. All of my siblings came and they're all older than me, so it's very rare for us to do family holidays nowadays because we're all so much older. So it was really nice. It was really good fun. Italy's great. I practiced a lot of my Italian out there. I'm studying Italian, so it was great to be able to practice some Italian when out there, and it was great fun. Just got back a couple of days ago and I've got exams coming up, guys. I've got 7 exams in May plus a 3,000 word essay to write, all for May, which I'm a little bit worried about, but that's 5 exams. That's it, man. But I'm done on the 26th of May, so that'll be nice to be done. But I start on the 4th of May, so in less than a month, which is pretty scary to think about. Anyway, I wanted to talk about YouTube titles. Sorry, I've just got a bunch of notes written down. If you ever see me look down, that is why I've actually got loads of stuff written down, because there's loads of stuff I wanted to talk about. But yeah, YouTube. Yeah, I've not been too active on YouTube. I'm sorry for that. Yeah, man, I don't know, man. I've just uni work, life, and then this stuff that I've got planned for the future in my personal life, in my work life, which has sort of been taking up a lot of time. And let's talk about that because, guys, I'm like 95. Realistically, I'm over 90% sure now that I'm going to be quitting ASMR. That I'm going to be quitting YouTube, which I know is quite a big thing to just drop on you. So I'm sorry about that. I'm going to make a big video explaining all of this soon. But basically, long story short, and if you watch me on TikTok or you've watched some of these rambles before, you might be aware of this. I am planning on becoming a teacher, a secondary school teacher, and I've been given I've essentially been given the job. So I'll start in September, whenever school starts, and I cannot be doing ASMR on the side. If you've been to a school, you know what it's like to have a teacher with a public image. You know what these sort of abuse they get, the bullying they receive. Apparently there's like some new law they're talking about bringing in to ban social media for under 16-year-olds. I wouldn't mind that by the time I start, but no, all jokes aside, I can't be doing ASMR at the same time that I'm a teacher for many reasons. I also just wouldn't really have the time. I wouldn't enjoy it as much. And I'm sort of ready to move on to a new phase of my life after I finish university anyway. But like I said, I'll do a big video explaining all of that. Yeah, I think what I want to do, I have like the whole of August free, and I think late August, maybe mid-August, I want to do a big 24-hour live stream where I go live on YouTube, TikTok and Twitch, and then as soon as I finish that stream, bang, that's it, that's the last you see of me. I've got an idea, like, because I know people will still want to watch my old videos and stuff, which is great that people do. I think I'm going to put them all in like a folder that is like one link, and you click on it and has all the videos. I'm going to figure out a way to do that, but like I said, I'll talk more about that at a later date. But if you weren't aware that was my plan, then I'm sorry to drop that on you, but I'm sure you can understand. And if not, then yeah, I'm sorry, but this is a decision I'm pretty sad on. So that's all I want to talk about myself. Yeah, let me know how you guys are doing. I'm always interested to see what people are saying about themselves. And if there is anyone watching that as a teacher, let me know what to expect, what to think. And don't worry, I'm not going in with extremely optimistic thoughts. I am fearing the worst, as you have to, going into the world of teaching, especially secondary school teaching. So, yeah. Anyway, that'll be fun. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cough in a minute. I've also been meditating quite a lot. I wanted to talk about meditation because I've done 2 guided meditation videos on this channel here on YouTube before. I say before, in the last few months. And yeah, they did well. People enjoyed them. I really quite enjoyed making them. And I wanted to talk about my love for meditation that has grown. So I always thought something like meditation was kind of bullshit, right? Like not even bullshit, I just didn't get it. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was talking about meditation, and he was talking about how great, guided meditation can be to unlock parts of the brain. He was talking to me about drugs like MDMA and psychedelics, and how, we prohibit the use of drugs like marijuana and psychedelics, but we allow for alcohol and smoking tobacco and gambling and all sorts of things that are terrible for humans. Yet these psychedelic drugs, all they're doing is unlocking a part of the brain. And I was sort of listening to this and thinking, God, like, this guy's some crazy hippie, but now I'm sort of in agreement with everything he said. Anyway, he referred me to a guy called Sam Harris, who's a very famous atheist, sort of I don't know what his title would be. I don't know. Yeah, an intellectual. I'm not sure. But he has an app called Waking Up. He's also got a book called Waking Up, which I'm enjoying reading. He's got some pretty interesting opinions, which I'm going to talk about in a minute when we get onto politics. But when it comes to meditation and mindfulness, he is brilliant. His app, Waking Up, is brilliant. I believe, this isn't sponsored by the way, obviously, but I believe you can get a 30-day free trial. Well, no, I know you can. You can get a 30-day free trial, like introduction to meditation. It's great. And I've really enjoyed meditating. I've been trying to do it every day. I've failed to do it every day, by a long way failed to do it every day, but whenever I do it, it always sets me up nicely. So I'd really recommend meditation. Just look into it. If the Sam Harris app isn't for you, I'm sure there are many other ones out there, but the app is called Waking Up. If you don't know where to start, I think that's a great guided meditation app. And if you listen to him and then you watch back my video, you will notice that I'm heavily influenced by his guided meditation. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about meditation. I know some people really don't like it, but meditation's been, has been done since before the birth of Jesus. Meditation is a common practice in Asia amongst all sorts of atheistic religions and theistic religions like Buddhism and Hinduism. I think there's like little subsets of religions like Advaita Vedantins in Hinduism. I think they meditate. I'm not too sure entirely about that kind of stuff, but we'll talk more about religion later. But speaking of Sam Harris, the guy who made the Waking Up app, the guy who wrote this book, he is a massive, as far as I'm concerned, Zionist. Now we're getting political, so hey man, before I start talking about this stuff, if you disagree with me, that's fine. Let me know in the comments and let's have a chat about it. If you agree with me, great. You're gonna realise by the end of this video that I'm very left-leaning, and let's talk about it, man. So yeah, Sam Harris is a massive Zionist. He believes that Israel has the right to exist in the land of Palestine, and I've been thinking a lot about Israel, especially over the past 9 to 10 months. I'd say a year ago and before then, I didn't pay too much attention to foreign affairs. I thought it didn't really bother me. The UK wasn't getting bombed, so I wasn't really involved. But now I'm really into politics. I've become super interested in all things politics in the UK and abroad. And the Israel situation just continues to develop as the most bizarre obsession with the West continuing to defend Israel as they commit heinous acts of genocide and ethnic cleansing upon innocent people in the Middle East. And the US, the UK, many countries in Europe support this, fund this, and I think it needs to, I think a few months ago, like I say, I had this realisation where I was like, hold on a minute, like, how can I not care about this when tens of thousands of innocent people are being killed? And of course, after whatever it was, late February, I think it was the 28th or something, when Donald Trump decided to back Netanyahu in their illegal invasion of Iran, how can you not be disgusted and appalled by such a conflict? And I think most people are, no matter where you sit on the political spectrum. I think most people are saying, why is my tax money going to sending young men and women into wars to kill other young men and women and innocent children? Of course, not just sending troops in, but funding or allowing the US and Israel to use bases out in the Middle East to commit heinous wars, acts of war crimes. So like I said, I became really interested by Israel-Palestine because I never really had an opinion on it, right? People would always ask me in my live streams about Israel and Palestine, and I just wouldn't know. I now have a very firm opinion. So a lot of people refer to October the 7th, 2023, when Hamas, who run Palestine, who are the sort of I guess, how would you say, the leaders of the Palestinians? They're deemed a terrorist group by the UK and the US. On October the 7th, 2023, they killed 1,200 Israelis. Of course, that is completely despicable and unacceptable, but nobody defends that. Nobody says that Hamas was right to do that. What I find crazy is the amount of Zionists and pro-Israel politicians, which seems to be most politicians, sadly, in the UK and in the US, at least mainstream politicians, defending Israel, and they refer back to October the 7th, they refer back to the 1,200 Israelis killed on that day, but for some reason they choose to ignore the 72,000 Palestinians in Gaza alone that have been killed since October the 7th, including 17,000 to 20,000 children, which many Holocaust experts and genocide groups and scholars have looked at and deemed this situation as a genocide. They say 17,000 to 20,000 children a day killed, which equates to a classroom of children every single day, just shy of 30 children a day. And even since this ceasefire, of course a ceasefire isn't actually a ceasefire because we are still seeing innocent civilians being killed in Gaza and in the occupied West Bank and beyond. And I just think it's so sad that we are witnessing witnessing what I would call a genocide in front of our eyes, and we're expected to remain silent, we're expected to ignore this. And I think I used to be a bit of a centrist, or a bit of like a nothing liberal who sort of looked at these things and thought, well, this doesn't really involve the UK, but of course it does, because we have always defended Israel. We were responsible for the Iraq War, and under Tony Blair, amongst other world leaders, and we've always been involved in conflicts in the Middle East. And I think a point has to come where we stop defending Israel as they kill innocents in the Middle East. And we can go on and talk about Iran, and Israel and the US can claim that Iran is developing nuclear weapons, or that somehow, some way they pose some sort of threat, and that's why there was a preemptive attack on Iran. But man, I would just say this, and I've talked to my flatmate about this, some of my best friends who aren't so politically interested, who would call themselves quite right-wing, and whenever I ask them about this, they go, I don't really care. And I don't know, maybe I just care too much about human lives. I don't know what it is, but when I see videos of children being killed, I don't understand how you can't feel the need to not even speak up about it, but at least just feel some sort of empathy towards such a thing happening. And man, it's so heartbreaking. And I was thinking about this point the other day. When you look at World War II, and World War II is so proudly taught in England as we defeated the Nazis, and I look at World War II and you think about the amount of people that were killed in that war. You think about the Holocaust, the 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust, the millions of innocent civilians and combatants that were killed in World War II and World War I. And let's talk about the Holocaust. You watch a film about the Holocaust. Why do you watch a film about the Holocaust? Because no one was filming the Holocaust at the time. So you have to watch a film reenacting it. You watch a film reenacting the Vietnam War, the Iraq War. You watch films reenacting this. And your heart pours and you go, how did we allow these things to happen? Yet nowadays, what do we have? We have phones, we have social media, and we can see genocides, ethnic cleansings occurring in front of our eyes. And yet we choose to remain silent, and even worse, we choose to elect leaders who commit these war crimes. And there's all sorts of counter arguments to everything I'm saying, counter arguments which I think are easy to counter back. But I think if you're watching this, I would just ask this question: do you think that we should be killing people over resources or religion or ethnicity? No, of course we shouldn't, and that's what's been happening. That is what is continuing to happen. And if you are against that, then I think you have to be against this Israeli mission to wipe out all these Arab nations in the Middle East. And man, it really does break my heart. I was watching a Mehdi Hassan, a journalist who I love and respect so much, video where he debunked Bill Maher. Is that how you say his name? Bill Maher. I think he's American or Canadian, but he's quite a famous comedian, TV host. And I just wrote down in my notes here, because Bill Maher said that Israel has always acted in defence, that Israel has never started a war. And he says that kids need to stop getting their news off TikTok. Okay, perhaps there's an argument to be had there. But what he's saying is that kids need to stop getting their arguments off TikTok, because TikTok tells them that, Israel has no right to defend themselves and blah, 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 blah. And Mehdi Hassan did a great video where he talked about the fact that in 1956, Britain, France and Israel planned and launched the war against Egypt. In 1967, the Six-Day War against Egypt, which expanded to Jordan and Syria, was led by Israel. The Lebanon invasion in 1982 by Israel. But even if you want to say Israel's acting in defence, even if you want to say that Hamas on October the 7th by innocent Israelis has resulted in their own people suffering and dying at the hands of Israel. And even if you want to say that's justified, even if you want to say the defence is justified, you cannot possibly justify killing over 70,000 people in under 3 years. That is an insane thing to justify, and it really does break my heart when we can see it on social media. We see Israeli soldiers, Israeli citizens with Palestinians as hostages, and we can see the way that they embarrass them, they shame them, they degrade them publicly, and they post it online, and we just look back and we say, well, it doesn't affect me, so I'm not going to care about it. Man, you should care about it, because these are our fellow human beings, and they're being raped, murdered, enslaved, pillaged, killed at the hands of tyrannical regimes. Yeah, it just makes me sad thinking about it, and I could talk for hours about this, but the other day there was a law passed in Israel which allowed the death penalty against Palestinians, and I believe, and I don't know how true this is, I haven't really verified this, but I believe I saw a tweet saying that this is like the first time that a death penalty against like a group of people from a particular nation or a particular ethnic group, whatever the stat was, it's the first time such a law has been enacted since the Nazis. I mean, we are witnessing the Nazis in real time right now, and people just sit back and they continue to vote in these people, man. So, yeah, whatever, I don't know. Anyway, that brings me on to my next point that I wanted to talk about, which was Donald Trump. Like I say, I've really only gotten into politics in the last... Like, I've always been interested in politics, but I think I've really got into politics in the last year. And I don't remember much from Donald Trump's first term, but I do remember it not being particularly good. But this second term of Donald Trump over the last year and a bit has just been incredible to see the man, the war criminal, just to see his acts unfold in front of our eyes. We're talking about yesterday, Easter Sunday, the day of Christ. Donald Trump, a man who claims to be a Christian, but when asked for his favourite Bible verse, said it was too personal. When asked if he preferred the Old or the New Testament, couldn't even give an answer. This fake Christian, this grifter, this charlatan, when he tweeted out yesterday, and I quote, Tuesday will be he didn't tweet out, he posted on his own app, didn't he? Truth Social. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. President Donald J. Trump. Not my words, the words of the President of the United States on his social media platform on the day commemorating the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the most important day in the history of Christianity, and the President of America tweets, praise be to Allah, open the fucking strait or you'll be living in hell. Let's not forget that the day this war began, 165 Iranian schoolgirls were killed in an attack on a primary school, or I don't know if it was a primary school, but on a school in Iran. This is insane. The fact that Trump and Farage and all these right-wing politicians claim that we need to free the Iranian women, the Persian women, of a disgusting religious dictatorship with an ayatollah who gives women no rights, and I agree with all that, by the way. I think, Iran does need to be a sort of secular democracy, but we know that that's not going to happen, and we certainly know that's not going to happen by bombing a school. irony of this situation. Donald Trump, Nigel Farage, Tommy Robertson, the far right, they all say that we need to that we need to free Persian women from this terrible regime in Iran. And how do they free the women? They kill 165 little girls whilst at school. Small, innocent girls. Children, just think about that for a minute. Just put yourself in their shoes. We are so lucky that we're in the position that we're in, that you're even watching this video. And yet here we are, watching the worst of the worst crimes, someone's entire universe literally ending in front of their very eyes before they've even got the chance to experience life. And it makes my blood boil that this man, Donald J. Trump, is the most influential man in the Western world, arguably in the whole world, along with Benjamin Netanyahu, and we are just told to sit back and say nothing and thank Donald Trump for all of this. Words can't express how much I hate this man. Words can't express how despicable of a man the US president is. And we haven't even, and we're just talking about Iran. We haven't talked about ICE and the hundreds of thousands of people deported and placed in illegal concentration camps, like the prison in El Salvador Seco, or like the concentration camps that are being filmed on social media in the US. That's not talking about the brutal murders of Alex Pretty and Renee Good, amongst others, who were brutally murdered by ICE agents who received no repercussions for doing such a thing. That's not to mention Trump's racist AI-generated video of Obama on an ape and Michelle Obama and Barack Obama on monkeys on apes in a social media post, something that would basically get any other president impeached on the spot. And that's not to talk about Epstein. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I've never been a conspiracy theorist. I don't really believe in conspiracies, but man, the Epstein stuff just continues to go on and on and on. And this war has done exactly what Trump wanted it to do, which is it has eliminated any focus on the Epstein files. I just want to remind you of a couple of quotes even before the Epstein files were released. Ghislaine Maxwell, the right-hand woman of Jeffrey Epstein, who is currently serving a very long prison sentence, on the day that she was about to get sentenced, Donald Trump, when asked about her, said, "I wish her well." He said, "I wish her well, the worst child sex trafficker of our lifetime." He said, "I wish her well." Jeffrey Epstein, before he died, said that he was Donald Trump's closest friend. He also said he likes women on the younger side. He likes women on the younger side. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then, of course, littered in the Epstein files are all sorts of emails and stories about Trump ogling over little girls. One that I always look at and I feel like didn't get much publicity is when Epstein emailed regarding Trump, have them ask my houseman about Donald almost walking through the door, leaving his nose print on the glass as young women were swimming in the pool, and he was so focused he walked straight into the door. I'm not joking, this is in the Epstein files. Essentially, if you didn't catch that, Donald Trump was so focused staring at young women swimming in the pool, obviously in a bikini or wearing less, that his nose print was left on the glass because he couldn't even walk through the door straight because he was staring at little girls in a swimming pool. Man, how can anyone defend this guy? How can anyone defend this man? If you're watching this and you are a supporter of Trump, you are a Republican fan of Donald Trump, just please tell me how, and I would love to have a debate with you because I just don't understand it. But let's talk about Israel again. Let's talk about Epstein. and this goes to the conspiracy theory point that I was talking about, that Epstein was a Mossad agent, a CIA agent for Israel, and a Mossad agent. I'm going to read out a couple of interesting points which we could see in the Epstein files. A 2020 report from the FBI's Los Angeles field office, released in early 2026, details a confidential source who was convinced Epstein was a co-opted Mossad agent. The informant claimed Epstein was trained as a spy under the supervision of former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Speaking of Ehud Barak, former Israeli Prime Minister, Epstein had a documented decade-long friendship with Barak, meeting him dozens of times between 2013 and 2017. Leaked emails show Epstein acting as an intermediary for Barak in security deals with countries like Mongolia and the Ivory Coast, and facilitating discussions on advanced Israeli surveillance technology. Former Israeli intelligence officer Ari Ben Manash has alleged that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell ran a honey trap operation to blackmail global elites into becoming assets for Israel. He claims that he saw Epstein in the office of Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who is himself widely rumoured to have been a Mossad agent. Let's talk about that quickly. Ghislaine Maxwell, the woman I've just been talking about. Her father, Robert Maxwell, British man, was a prominent media tycoon, a British MP, and an alleged spy for Israel's intelligence agency Mossad. He was reportedly deeply involved with Israeli intelligence and was buried in Israel in 1991 in a state funeral attended by top officials who praised his secretive contributions to Israel. After falling from his yacht Lady Ghislaine in 1991, some investigations and theories suggest that his death was connected to Mossad operation, although officially it was deemed an accidental drowning or heart attack. Ghislaine Maxwell, the right-hand woman to Jeffrey Epstein, her father was almost certainly a Mossad agent who mysteriously died in Israel or falling off a yacht in 1991. God, everything links together, everything ties back to Israel, everything ties back to Netanyahu, to Epstein, to Trump, and these are the people, the most powerful people that run the world. And I'm told that Israel is a democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East. That's not true, it's an ethnocracy, but even if you want to say that, how does that justify any of this? And I do agree, I think people are brainwashed. I think a lot of the media brainwashes people into believing that these people, we say that people speak like politicians, it's because politicians have a way of speaking that convinces people that they're right, and I think it's sad, man. I think it's really sad. But that's all I've said about Trump. I haven't even talked about the tariffs, the climate and environment, the smearing, foreign aid and global health, the 25th Amendment, the fact that he wants to break the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, has already gone against all of those amendments, the First, the Fourth, the Fifth and the 14th, and also wants to go against the 12th and the 22nd Amendment by running for a third term. Haven't even talked about the officials he's elected, people like Pete Hegseth and RFK Jr. Oh my god, okay, let's talk about Pete Hegseth, because now I want to talk about religion. Political rant over somewhat. I do want to talk about Christian nationalism in a minute. But let's leave Israel aside for a minute. So Pete Hegseth is the let me find his official title. I don't want to get this wrong. The United States Secretary of War. The Secretary of War. First of all, the fact that he's called the Secretary of War is crazy. But he is a mad, horrible man, a Christian, and he has been influenced heavily by a pastor called Douglas Wilson. Now, Douglas Wilson is a famous pastor in the US of the Presbyterian Church, and he is, I listen to him go on Sam Harris's podcast, to go back to Sam Harris, the guy I was talking about earlier. And I know I said Sam Harris has some pretty dodgy opinions about Israel. Well, what I will say is, to be fair to Sam Harris, he's very anti-Trump. I think he's probably a bit of a liberal. But I listened to Pete Hegseth go on his podcast, and it was just Pete Hegseth digging his own grave for 2 hours, is what it sounded like to me. This is a guy, a crazy guy, who first of all believes that the earth is 6,000 years old because he takes the Bible at face value, fine, whatever. And this is where I'm going on to talk about religion, because I'm told that religion is peaceful, that religion spreads love, that we need religion to have morals. But I just want to tell you about this guy, Doug Wilson, who is influencing Pete Hegseth, the man responsible for this war on Iran, which is killing thousands of innocents. In this podcast with Sam Harris, Pete Hegseth said, on gay marriage, he says that in his ideal system there would be no same-sex marriage and same-sex couples would not be allowed to adopt children. I would say that's a pretty bad opinion to have, but fair enough. A lot of theists, a lot of religious people that subscribe to religious texts believe the same thing. He goes on to say, and by the way, when I say fair enough, I don't mean that I believe that, I just mean whatever, dude. Like, we know that there's homophobia in religion, in a lot of religion. He then goes on to say, on homosexual acts, he says he would support laws against what he calls public vice, comparing them to older sodomy laws. He explicitly says there would be no pride parades and no more flaunting that sort of thing. On adultery and homosexuality, he says the Old Testament death penalties are, in his view, maximum penalties rather than mandatory minimums. But he also says he can envision circumstances where capital punishment could be applied, and I quote, without injustice for adultery or homosexual conduct. In other words, he would support stoning homosexuals to death. And he thinks that secularism hasn't worked in the US and it needs to go to Christian nationalism, where they will murder people for not reading the Old Testament as it was intended to be written. Honestly, guys, I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes when I read this stuff and wonder how there are millions of people that support this ideology. To continue, when Trump's adultery is raised as an example, Wilson agrees that this could be the sort of case where death should be at least on the menu. He says a man who is, He says a man who betrays his wife is capable of betraying anyone, and he treats adultery as an extremely grave offence in biblical terms. This is a man that influences Pete Hegseth, the US Secretary of War, who is the right-hand man to Donald Trump, the President of the US, the most important country in the Western world. I can't with religious nationalism, with religious fundamentalism. I can't do it. I have no problem with people that are religious. I have no problem with religions existing. But man, when you have these insane ideologies, it just makes me feel sick. Let me continue. When given a hypothetical child who becomes Hindu, this is Doug Wilson, the same guy that I've just been talking about. When Sam Harris says to him, what if your child said, I want to be a Hindu, and is gay and breaks Sabbath rules? He says, yes, such a child could be turned over to authorities for execution under the biblical framework. Wow. So if you have a child born into Christianity, he would defend that child if they decided one day to become a Hindu, or if they came out as gay, or if they broke Sabbath rules. He would defend that child to be turned over to authorities and be executed. just sick stuff, especially when you consider that your religion is wholly dictated by your place of birth and your hereditary dynasty. Whatever your family believes in, you end up 95% of the time believing in that exact same thing. Just insane to me when colonialism and invasion have dictated the religions of the entire world. The fact that this guy can say that he would kill people for believing something different, how can I then be told that this is peaceful? He says that once a Christian order is established, some high-handed rebellions could be punished very severely, and that public executions can serve as an example to others. He says flatly that he is not going to apologise for any sanction that's clearly in the Bible, including biblical executions, and he explicitly agrees that in such a system, picking up sticks on the Sabbath could be a killing offence because it is biblical. I know that there'll be religious people watching this. There'll be Christians and Muslims and believers in Abrahamic gods and the Judeo-Christian God, and I have no problem with you. I have no problem with your religion, but you need to understand. I don't mean to say you need to understand. That sounds incredibly patronising. What I'm trying to say is, when I read that makes me feel sick, and the fact that someone like that could even, and I used to be a bit of a Christian myself. In fact, not a bit of a Christian. I used to be a Christian. And when I hear stuff like that, I think, God, they walk amongst us in their millions. And it's insane to me that people can defend it so vehemently. God, I've got so much I want to say about this, but I've been recording for 42 minutes, so I'm going to try and speed things up. What I find interesting about religion, and I'm sticking with Christianity because I don't really want to get into other religions right now, because that could be a whole nother video, but I'm sticking with Christianity for now. And what I find so interesting is, I'm told that as humans we wouldn't have morals without Christians, that slavery wouldn't have been abolished without Christians, blah blah blah. But just read the Old Testament for yourself, please. And by the way, if you want to argue that the Old Testament, I don't read the Old Testament, I read the New Testament, I think it's a silly argument, because Jesus says in the New Testament, Jesus says, and I quote, "Do not think that I have come to the law or the prophets, not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law, until everything is accomplished. Therefore anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Jesus said that in the Sermon on the Mount, referring to his fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy and law. So I can't be told that the Old Testament can be ignored, removed, and replaced by the New Testament, when the Old Testament is literally encouraged by Jesus in saying that not a single stroke of the pen can be disappeared from the law. And this brings me to the Old Testament. In 1 Samuel we have the destruction of the Amalekites, the order, "Now go attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them, put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys, all of the animals, all of the men, all of the women, all of the children and infants." And when Saul, who was ordered to commit this destruction upon the Amalekites, when he does such a thing as ordered and decides to leave alive the king as well as some of the best of the livestock, he leaves them alive. For this small act of mercy, God responds by saying to the prophet Samuel, "I regret that I have made Saul king because he's turned away from me and he has not carried out my instructions." And he strips him of being a king. So this is not hyperbolic. Speaking of slavery, I'm told that without Christianity we wouldn't have had the abolitionist movement. Well, read Exodus 21 with reference to Hebrew slaves. It says, if you have a male slave, they're to go free after 7 years. But if you give them a wife and they have children while they're your property, then they don't go free after 7 years. Only the man does. How crazy is that? It continues to say, but if the man decides that he loves his wife and his children and his master and wants to stay, then he can say to his master he wants to stay, at which point he's taken outside, his ear is pierced like cattle, and he becomes a slave for life. By the way, why aren't the female slaves let go after 7 years in the first place? And the children? Crazy. But also, how can I be told that Christianity is responsible for the abolitionist movement when it's also responsible for the introduction of slavery? Of course, slavery existed before Christianity, but you take my point. You know, I'm told that God is all loving and all powerful, yet he couldn't end this movement that we'd all be so in contrast to. And what I find so laughable about what Doug Wilson says, the guy that I was mentioning earlier on the podcast, is that he doesn't support genocide, he doesn't support slavery, yet he supports killing homosexuals, he supports killing adulterers, he supports killing those who pick up a stick on the Sabbath. Man, do you know what I mean? Is that not crazy to me? And there are so many great religious people out there. I really want to reinforce and emphasise such a thing, and I'm sure there will be many of you that are religious that are watching and agreeing with everything I have to say. But in such a case, how do you dispute the first point where Jesus says on the Sermon on the Mount, referring to fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy and law, that anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands will be called least in the kingdom of heaven? How do you justify that and then ignore these parts of the Old Testament? I just don't get it, man. I used to be a Christian, and I've tried to wrap my head around this for so long. But we live on a planet that is a universe that's 14.6 billion years old, a rock that is 4.6 billion years old, that has had life for 3.5 billion years. And religion came along, Christianity came along 2,000 years ago, and has grown into the biggest religion in the world with billions of followers. But I think there are many people who haven't actually read these texts, and I think if they did, their eyes might be open. Their eyes might open up. And that's why I'm scared of Christian nationalism. That's why I find it right to talk about, because Christian nationalism will advocate the killing of people for not believing in the same thing as those who lead. That is what nationalism is. That is what Christian religious nationalism is. And you can say the same, of course, about Islamic nationalism. And I think when you look at something like Christian nationalism, you look at world leaders, you look at guys like Nigel Farage and Reuploded, mainly guys like Reuploded, and you look at like the Nick Fuentes type in the US, these far right Christian nationalists, they really scare me, man, because they're growing in popularity every single day, and they don't represent the true word of God, but in their eyes they do. And what they want is to kill people for not believing the same thing as them. And of course I haven't talked about the amazing verses in the Bible which show God as a God of love, as a God of compassion, that show Jesus as a genuinely amazing man. But man, on the day after the commemoration, on the day where we're all meant to respect and remember the day where Jesus died on the cross for our sins forever, I just find it hard to reconcile all of these things, man. Yeah, I don't know, I think about it a lot, because I also look at the earth and I look at the world and I think we have all these emotions, we have these amazing bodies, these amazing world. How has this formed? Like, surely there is some religion out there, right? Like some God that created it all. And maybe that would make me a deist who believes that there was some God that created the universe, but with no human care. Prayers don't get answered. There's no heaven. There's no hell, etc., God's just the God that created everything and let it be. That seems hard to believe. But I guess when you consider the trillions of planets out there and stars and solar systems and galaxies, then perhaps it does start to make sense that we do have this life on this planet because there's so much out there that, of course, eventually there was going to be some planet that develops some habitable life, and I'm sure there are other planets out there that have habitable life too. But man, it just saddens me that the world is full of so much pain, suffering, hate, division, racism, bigotry, and it seems worse than ever, at least in my lifetime at the minute, with illegal immigrants, undocumented migrants, whatever you want to call them, who are fleeing war, who are just searching for some steadier shores, and get told that they're not allowed to stay here because they're scared that they're going to join some sort of rape gang. I mean, I find it insane, man. Look at where so many undocumented migrants come to the UK from. They come from countries like Syria, Afghanistan, Iran, Yemen, Lebanon, the Middle East. Why do they come from these countries? Because their countries have been bombed to death. Their countries are torn apart. Their countries are run by people like the Taliban, like the Ayatollah, and they flee to get some sort of freedom. And where do they go? They rock up to the UK. And why are these countries run by these people? Because we bomb them, we attack them for decades. In the name of some sort of secular democracy, a secular democracy that never comes, and instead the Taliban still runs Afghanistan, and Iraq still has an Ayatollah, and Iran is still going to have an Ayatollah. And all that's happened is millions of citizens get displaced, and they have to flee to steadier shores. And when they come to us, we tell them that they're not welcome here. It seems so incredibly hypocritical to me and so unhuman. And on the day that humans have gone as far away from Earth as we've ever seen, right? On the day where humans have gone as far away from Earth as ever happened before, and they're going around the moon, and we see these amazing pictures that NASA post of the Earth from afar, from space, and you look at that and you still support borders and division and people not being united as one. And man, it just saddens me. It used to annoy me. I think it just saddens me now. And that's why I support Zach Balansky here in the UK. I think he's a great politician. I agree with his proposal for a wealth tax, which includes a 1% tax on assets over £10 million and 2% on those over £1 billion, which could raise up to £25 billion annually to reduce the 4.5 million children living in poverty in the UK. I support him for his stance on energy and environment and on accelerating renewable energy, on renationalising water companies to stop sewage scandals, to stop the Margaret Thatcherite neoliberalism which resulted in free markets, privatisation of state industries, deregulation, reduced union power, restructuring the British economy towards capitalism which doesn't work anymore because you have the billionaires becoming trillionaires and you have the working class, the proletariat, who now have pennies to spend at the end of the month once they've spent all their money on bills, on rent, on groceries, on anything. They're left with nothing. And unemployment is going up to an all-time high in the UK because now these CEOs and these business owners are replacing humans with AI. Now they're saying that they can't afford human workers now because everyone buys stuff online. The high street shops are dying, so they don't need workers there anymore. It's so sad, man. It's so sad. And yeah, okay, I think I'm going to end there. That's my rant over. My very long rant, my 55-minute rant, 54-minute rant, however long it's been. I'm sorry. I'm also not sorry because I basically stand by everything I've said. But if you disagree with me, that's fine. We should disagree with each other, but we should be happy to have these discussions. So please tell me in the comments if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, or if you don't want to comment, maybe send me a DM or an email. Or if you don't want to do any thanks guys. Alright, I'm gonna end the video here. And I started this video, by the way, talking about bloody quitting ASMR. Maybe I should make a politics channel. I just do want to do that, but yeah. Sorry, I got a bit too heated there. I'm thinking about a lot. I'm thinking about stuff that I might regret saying. Oh well, I've said it now. Thank you guys so much for watching. God, I hope this recording has recorded and doesn't corrupt, because if it does, I might cry. Thank you guys. I love you all.